Good morning. You're listening to Central Wisconsin's 24-hour information station, AM 1320 WFHR. It's time now for the Morning Magazine, brought to you by Comfort Air Heating, Cooling, Plumbing. Now, with the Morning Magazine, here's Carl Hilke.
Good morning, everyone. It is 10:06 on the clock, and welcome to Morning Magazine, where today I am joined for the full hour by our own Mayor, Zach Vruwink. Mayor, thank you very much for joining us.
Yes, good morning.
And we even have another guest in with us today, if that wasn't enough. We have Hobie in with us from the Youth Council. Hobie, how are you today?
I'm great. How about you?
Good. Thanks a lot for coming in. We appreciate that. Guys, before we got going too much into things here, what I thought would be kind of interesting to do is talk about the history of the Youth Council and what got that started and how long that's been around, if you guys wouldn't mind touching on that.
Sure. Great question. The Youth Council was formed about 6 years ago. This is, I believe, the sixth class that's gone through the Youth Council. The Youth Council came about really alongside some other mayor's councils that I created when I entered office. We had a passionate residents on a number of topics, one of which was beautification, another was sustainability, and the third of those councils is the Mayor's Youth Council. Recognizing that as somebody that had grown up in this community, was once a young person, went to high school here, that youth didn't always... Youth were given a bit of lip service, really, when it said we want to bring youth involved, youth voice and perspective in, but doing so is quite a different thing than saying that we want to do that. We had previously and continue to have youth observers at our city council meetings, but they're observers and they don't engage generally in the debate or the topics because, one, they're not a voting member of the council, and two, they're not involved in the committee process.
Sure.
So the Youth Council was really created to formally put youth at the table at sort of my level, having my ear and allowing them the opportunity to inform me about the various issues and topics that they care about. And so every youth council year has been very different, a different group of students, different interests, different community issues at the same time. And but it's been a very successful program as far as I'm concerned, because we have anywhere from 20 to 30 members of high school students from both Lincoln and Assumption. We've included some from Port Edwards in the past. It's an application process. Those members from high school have to apply. They can serve for up to 2 years on a given basis, and they have to reapply. So we get anywhere from those that are entering their senior year, perhaps, to those that are just coming in as freshmen. And their role and charge is to consider topics, again, that are very interesting and important to them, and issues that they want the city to prioritize. And in this case, some of the past projects have been fundraising for the Aquatic Center. The youth have been involved in donor presentations. They led a youth preference survey around what are the amenities and features that youth wanted in the facility. They incorporated in that survey was also a question of whether or not the city should make a pool a priority. So a lot of topics and a lot of information. Another project the Youth Council has been involved in has been the zoo master planning process. So every year a little bit different process, a little bit different topic and interest. All around, I think, a vision or an intent of getting youth involved at the table and providing feedback and input at a place alongside other members of the community that are generally more engaged than what youth can be. So
that's fantastic. And I think that one of the things that, well, for me, certainly one of my favorite political stories and one of the things I respect the most about any kind of office is what Lincoln did when he first got into office, where he brought in people into his cabinet that he ran against, people who had the exact opposite thoughts that he did, because he was a big believer in, I don't know everything. I'm not in touch with everything. It's important to have other points of view, and certainly accessibility. And those are two things that you're kind of hitting on with the Youth Council here. We're getting older every day, you and I, sir.
Right.
So there's only so much we know as far as tapping into the youth and what you guys are thinking, what's going on, what the issues that are important to you guys. Here is a way of not only having that accessibility, but kind of opening your cabinet, if you will, a little bit more and getting that kind of impression in there. That's great. That's fantastic. For you, Hobie, what got you to want to be involved in this?
Well, I kind of wanted to do something new. I'd been involved with a few other things. I got a couple programs going on over at the middle school. So I really wanted to diversify with kind of the groups that I was involved with. And I thought that the Mayor's Youth Council would be really interesting to do that with.
Great, fantastic. So I know that we had a couple things to review, to go over, and I don't know if you want to start with that, Hobie, kind of getting into what you guys went over. Was yesterday?
Some of the projects for this
Yeah, some of
year,
the projects coming up. Yeah.
All right. So lately at our meetings, we've been working on getting our movie night going in. We're going to be doing a movie night over at Robinson Park, and we've had all these meetings, kind of refining what we want to see with that. And then we also have a bicycle benefits program where we're working with local businesses, trying to get people out around the community on their bikes, trying to promote physical activities.
Yeah.
And we really want that to happen in our city.
Sure. Yeah, those are both great ideas, great thoughts, and good on you guys for thinking of that and then for pushing that, and kind of getting that more out there into the public.
Yep.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Good to hear.
What were the motivations, Hobie, would you say, for the teen movie night? And maybe you can talk a little bit of background of why you selected that, or the group selected that as their project for the year.
Well, we really wanted to have the youth in the community get together. So I think that was kind of the main push for that. And we it's the Mayor's Youth Council for a reason, getting youth together. So that was kind of our incentive to do that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it sounds like that's an issue that's not only important to you personally, but not the youth council, but to your age group. Seeing more of a community interaction, seeing people coming together a little bit more. I don't know about you, but that's really refreshing to hear. Mm-hmm. For us older people, we keep looking at you guys and worrying that the disconnect. And being everything is so personal and kind of solo, really, being online and this and that. So that's great to hear about that you guys are considering that you're thinking of that, taking some initiative towards it. Wonderful. That's great. And what movie do you guys have lined up?
So we had a process, and we sent out a couple movies to the community, and we got about 200 responses, and those were Footloose. What was the other one?
Ferris Bueller's Day Off.
Yep. And An Instant Family.
Mm-hmm. Nice.
And everybody, well, not everybody, but we had a lot of responses for Ferris Bueller's Day Off in that one.
Okay. Great.
200 responses. So
that's a good one. Yeah. Well, that'll be fun.
Talk about some of the features of the movie night that were important to the youth council.
Right. So we wanted a really good turnout. We wanted a good movie selection, a positive environment, and we kind of wanted to, our main thing is staying in power. Like, we want people talking about it. That's what we mean by that. Mm-hmm. And an enjoyable experience. So
excellent.
We want to be able to have it be a great event this year so we can keep it going.
Make a tradition out of it, kind of. Yeah.
Yep.
So, Hobie, how many members are there of the youth council?
I don't know that off the top of my head. I'd say there's probably 25.
Yeah,
that's a great sign. That's really good. If there's only 3 or 4 of you, you can pull that out right away. That's great to hear that there are that many people involved in it. That's fantastic.
Yep.
And how often do you guys meet?
Lately we've been meeting a couple times a month, and so we have the main meetings a couple times a month, but aside from the meetings, we're doing a lot of other things. We're with the bicycle benefits. We're going around to businesses, seeing if they're interested in it. So as a main group, we meet a couple times a month, but then we have a lot of other things going on with it.
Sure.
What are some of the discoveries you had around the issue of access or the issues of equity, as we've talked in our meetings about the bicycle issues? What are some barriers that you've discovered in your review of businesses?
Right. So one of the big things is kind of like safety, getting around the city on a bike. There's some areas that are kind of intimidating, I guess, to be bike riding. So that was one thing, and some businesses are clustered in some spots, and there's kind of some spots where there's not many businesses that are bike friendly, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Sure. So with that, no, and I do want to say real quickly to Travis Plowman from our Wisconsin Rapids Community Media, say hi to Travis. Ignore the poor guy here, but I appreciate the work you're doing there,
Camera
Trav.
rolling anyway.
Exactly, yeah. I know that you guys had a council meeting recently. That if you wanted to go over that, some of the things that you went through with that.
Sure. A
that'd be
couple of
great.
quick mentions on the Youth Council. We're going to begin our recruitment for next year's students. We're going to be graduating, I think, 5 or 6 from the Youth Council that are seniors that are going to be going off to do some amazing things in the world. So we're going to be recruiting. So if folks or listeners that have high school students that they know that might be looking for an involvement with the city government, a lot of our department heads take this input and consider it in their community planning. So you really get an important role of influence, I would say, as it relates to youth perspectives. So I would just mention the recruitment piece, and then Saturday's event. Hobie, maybe you want to talk about what's coming up on Saturday.
Yeah, sure. So for our younger youth in the community, we're having what's called Kids to Park Day. It's at Robinson Park from 1 to 3 p.m. And there'll be some events there, including arts and crafts, kickball. We'll be having a scavenger hunt and maybe a few other things. So it's, again, 1 to 3 p.m. at Robinson Park on Saturday. And we'll be hoping to see you there.
It's a free event, right? So it's open to all in the community that want to show up for any time during that period of from 1 to 3 p.m.
Yep.
Hobie, if I'm a young person out there and I'm listening and I'm thinking about joining the council, what is something that you would kind of say as far as like a reason to join?
Well, let's see here. So we have everybody in the youth council is really inviting and open to hearing everybody's opinion. So if you want your opinion to be heard, I'd highly recommend looking into joining.
It's fantastic and very well worded, actually. There's a really good point in there where, there's a lot of people in life that like to sit and complain, but they don't do anything about it. They just kind of sit on the sidelines. Well, there has never been a highlight made from the sidelines. You got to get in the game. Good on you for thinking of that and doing that. That's some good initiative right there.
Hobie, where do you go to school, and what grade are you going into in the fall?
I go to school at Lincoln, and I'm going to be a sophomore.
Excellent. So folks should hear who you are and where you go to school.
Yeah, and Mayor, you're stealing my questions here. I mean, you've got a job. Don't take my... No,
right, exactly.
I'm just kidding.
Stay in your lane, right?
Great. No. That's great questions, and I appreciate that, actually. And that's good to hear, Hobie. Good on you. So we did have, you guys had a council meeting recently. Yeah. And if we want to review some of that, go into.
Yeah, we had our city council meeting last month. Long agenda. We didn't leave our meeting till after 9:30 last night, so it was a long meeting. But nonetheless important. A couple of things to point out. We've got a couple new firefighters. In fact, 4 of them took their oaths of office and received their badge pinning, and a whole host of promotions. We've renamed some folks in our department to add the title battalion chief, and so that happened last night, as well as some other promotions due to retirements and departures from the department. So we want to commend those folks that are joining the city and putting on a badge and serving our fine residents. There's also one item from the Planning Commission that's worth mentioning is that Wood Trust Bank, it's been announced, but we had some formal review last night. Wood Trust Bank is building a new branch in front of Tractor Supply on 8th Street at 8th and Griffith, or 8th and Z, however you want to look at it. So that was another item from last night's council meeting that's worth mentioning. There were also an item that's related to the realignment of 3rd Avenue. So folks remember or have driven near the Centralia Center, the former Walmart and Woco building. Even before that, there was a sweeping curve put in the street, and because of a state grant that the city had received on behalf of support of the Tribune building project, the state has agreed to consider redirecting those funds to improvements outside the building for the benefit of a farmer's market. So we're going through a process right now where we're looking at redesigning 3rd Avenue, considering elements and concerns around handicapped accessible parking, as well as the Meals on Wheels users and how they interact with the Centralia Center. And of course, there's other tenants in the building too, the community theater, the public access community media, the Aging and Disability Resource Center and Park Place. So a lot of users, and nonetheless important for us to consider all that input before we redesign something. So that project was held over for another meeting, but did want to mention that because it's a significant project. We've seen the farmers market and Lunch by the River get relocated because of the mall redevelopment, and then Lunch by the River having to relocate because of the Veterans Park and gas main and street work over on the east side. But I think folks that have been to the farmers market, though there isn't a tremendous amount of produce in season yet, it's still a very widely attended event, and I think there's a lot of desire to continue to pursue a permanent location for the farmers market, so folks can have adequate seating and shade if they want shade, and just place to have conversation and congregate and enjoy their food from the farmers market.
It's a very popular event, and that is one of the things that I've heard from listeners out there that they were curious about if that is something that you guys are looking into doing and having a more permanent place. And that how has it been going, the logistics and everything with all the construction? I can't imagine that's been a juggling act for you.
It has. It's been very difficult to to try to direct people to a certain place because we don't know where temporary closures might happen, right? So downtown on the east side, there's a couple of projects. The We Energies gas main project is happening. They're upsizing actually some utilities in service of all the gas users, but primarily ND Paper, which is going to be bringing online a major natural gas consumer with their expansion and renovations at the beer and paper mill. And then the city's project, or the project within the city, which is the Metalco aluminum plant. They have very, very high natural gas uses. So the gas main actually comes from the west and services all the east side development. Surprisingly, you'd think it'd come from the east from a construction standpoint, but it runs downtown through those parks and then out to the east. So that project's happening, and while we're on the topic of Metalco, I talked about it a lot about it on our recent shows. Friday this week, we're actually going to be closing on the sale of that property officially. So Metalco will own the property. They're going through the process with state air permitting and other environmental review right now, and they're behind schedule because the state's schedule has put them behind, frankly, and they intend to break ground in July. It's likely going to be late July at this point, and maybe slightly later if the process gets any further delayed from the state level. So very exciting project. That's the $80 million investment for the aluminum plant, the 80 jobs that are going to be created directly with that. So Trailer City will be assembled out on the Rapids East Commerce Park off 48th here in a couple of weeks as they get ready to spin up for construction.
You hear it, I'm sure, more than I do even, but just even talking to people leading up to the interview here, that's certainly one of the main things on people's minds is jobs, jobs. So good to hit on that, and I appreciate that being brought up. Yeah. With these meetings that you're having, I also noticed that you had your coffee with the mayor going on. How did that go?
Good. We had 10 folks, I think, that were at the libraries, and then the Lowell Center always draws at least 10. So it's always good because it's an easy opportunity for someone to come meet with me that doesn't necessarily have to make an appointment and come to City Hall. So I try to get to places that are convenient to access and frankly friendly, and then maybe less intimidating than meeting at City Hall in a conference room or something. It's
not something that you see every politician, every mayor, every congressman, any senator, we can name any of them, do those kind of things all the time. Yeah. What made it? What was it? Why was it? Because I've noticed your whole time in office, you've done these kind of things. Yeah. It was, your first month in office, I want to say that you were doing this already. Right. Why has that always been important to you?
I found as a taxpayer and resident of the city that I want my elected officials to be responsive and to be listeners. And I think I learned truly how to put that into practice and how valuable it was very early on, to your point that, if I'm only as effective as the people that I'm engaging with and the community members that are informing me of what's on their mind and what their priorities are. I don't have an agenda that I showed up to office that I said I'm going to implement. It's been a concoction really of people's ideas and input. And even on yesterday's topic at the council meeting was on the bullying ordinance. That was a great venue yesterday at the library to talk with folks to get their input. Very different backgrounds at each of those individuals and very different ages. I had someone that was a student in high school and then all the way to seniors that really had very different perspectives on issues. So it helps me just stay connected with residents. I mean, I'm very visible. I'm closest to the people as mayor, but those opportunities, I found, in fact, many mayors have duplicated that and said that given them kind of space to be able to test ideas and get input. So, and I found that people have taken me up on the opportunity, which has been helpful. I think at every convening, there's someone that's always shown up, whether it's just a handful of folks or over a dozen. It's a good place for me to be, and it's a good place for residents to get an update in light of declining news media or local reporting. You guys do a great job. Certainly, this opportunity is great for me to connect with listeners. But unless people are listening to these outlets, they're not getting the information. And so I try to, in the decline of the newspaper and that sort of thing, provide those opportunities for residents to ask questions and get informed.
I'm really glad you brought that up too, because that is so vital nowadays. Is getting the information, getting the correct information out there. One of the things that I take a lot of pride in that we do here is we are not partisan. We are just a fact and news information station.
Right.
And that is one of those things that we need more of. And the fact that we are losing so much of journalism in the paper industry, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Those events that you do, those giving those avenues to people are that much more important.
Right.
So good on you for that.
Thank you. I found most of those those attendees are not on social media too.
Right.
So it's a compliment to all the social media and all the blogging that I try to put out to the community, recognizing that's only a subset of the community that see that information too.
You brought this up, and it was something that I really, especially since we had the youth council in with us today, I really was kind of curious to bring up. And it is what you said about for those that don't know, the Wisconsin Rapids City Council supports the anti-bullying ordinance, increasing fines for repeat offenses.
Yep.
The story is a national story.
It is.
It's really very surprising. You don't see Wisconsin Rapids up there very often with these national stories, but here we are with it, and it's one of those ones that it's not often you see such an overwhelming amount of people that are in support of something. Nowadays, I always use the Babe Ruth reference. Babe Ruth got 91% of the vote to get into the Hall of Fame. Yeah. Like, who was voting for Babe Ruth to go into the Hall of Fame?
Yeah.
You don't see these kind of numbers very often. And even talking to listeners leading into this, I expected, okay, if I talk to 5 people, 3 of them might like it, 2 won't, whatever.
Right.
5 for 5. And then it was 5 for 5 the next time I talked to people. People are just in all different age groups, people with kids, people without kids. For you, Hobie, being in school right now, how do you feel about this ordinance, this new bill that's being kind of this idea?
Well, I really support anti-bullying. I mean, you want to be able to be in a place and have a positive atmosphere and feel like you're being treated as everybody else is. So I think everybody else, pretty much everybody else in my school can agree with me on that, and we just want to see a positive attitude.
It's a whole different ball game for these guys. When we were in school, even if I think all of us had some type of bullying we dealt with in one way or another. Right. And when we got done, when the bell rang, we went home. You had a little bit of a kind of sanctuary almost. You had a break from all of that. You got to be around your friends. You got to do different things. Now you guys don't really get a break. You go home and you're online, and it's right there at social media as well. And for those that are kind of like out of touch of that, I think that's why it's so important to get your opinion, Hobie, to get other people's feedback on this of why it is an issue nowadays, and not so much, it just builds character. There's a big difference of some razzing, me and my friends giving each other a hard time because my football team lost or something like that, and hurtfulness and just kind of just wanting to inflict that kind of thing. That's why we have to have this kind of stuff and why it's so important. Exactly. It's good to hear. Now, were you was this something that was brought to you? Was this something that you became that was your own cause, or how did this come about? Yeah, a little bit of
background for folks. The school district, and this was a lot of the discussion last night was around this is not to replace any of the continuum of interventions. The district has per state law has interventions and a plan on how they deal with anti-bullying measures and how it's a part of their curriculum, how we as a city and our school resource officers from our police department interact with the school district. We've got one at the high school level, one at the elementary and middle school level. So this isn't meant to replace, right? This is another tool in the toolbox and sort of probably the very end of the other interventions, the referrals, the mental health services, the counseling, the conversations that hopefully get assembled at times with parents. But in terms of the history on it, the school district and the police chief had some conversations, and I think this isn't the first of its kind. In fact, it's modeled after plovers. Truthfully, it's identical to the plover ordinance, so it's not brand new. So to see it get national attention, both New York Times, NBC, I mean, it wasn't a news source that didn't cover this story, surprisingly. And it's been very interesting to read the reflections in the comments, because it gives me a sense, one, of where sometimes media doesn't get a chance to tell the whole entire story. Right. And so last night we had a great conversation to that effect about this isn't meant to replace the already anti-bullying measures or how the school district deals with these issues. One issue that was raised that I thought was interesting was around a sentiment that government, if they can't deal with a problem, they impose a fine as a solution. And I think it unfairly mischaracterized our decision to impose this ordinance because it's something's not working. And it's really a matter of sometimes you just need another tool, another thing to say, a deterrent, right? And my concern is unintended consequences, that if there's a cycle of abuse or a pattern of issues at home, this could result in unintended consequences. So that's one of my personal concerns. Very well intentioned, serves a great purpose. The measure of it will be not necessarily on how many citations are written, but how many interventions and conversations get to a point where our school resource officers or our police department engage in a dialogue between parents or guardians and their children to say, this is certainly not something we want, and if it's not resolved, we've got a citation that we're going to issue, and then the courts are going to have to deal with how it's remedied. But one thing that we can't lose sight of is the need for counseling and mental health services. And the superintendent of the schools last night articulated very well that school districts and the state are ill-prepared and under-equipped and underfunded when it comes to this issue. And they don't really know how to deal with it because it's a relatively new issue. When we talk about cyberbullying, our generation had instant messaging. Yeah. That was probably the extent of it. Now then Facebook came as I graduated high school, and then these folks have now 4 or 5 or 6 different platforms in which they're engaging with each other on. And so I think there's, unfortunately, the unintended consequence of that platform is the availability of how to bully and to create negative communication that is sometimes harassment or not positive behavior.
The whole world is adapting to it, is adjusting, and we're all kind of in real time making laws and different things about it. So we're all adapting at the time, and it's not to say that this is the perfect scenario. This is going to solve everything. It is something that's helping get to that point, get to this point where we can get to where kids don't have to worry about this as much, and there's certainly concerns, but there's concerns with everything. The only way to get things moving is to get the ball rolling, have something like this in place, and going from there and finding, okay, well, here we didn't see this coming, or we can't get there until we have something like this. We've been speaking with Mayor Zach Vruwink and Hobie from the Youth Council here. We're going to take a real short break. When we come back, we will open up the phone lines, 424-2600. If you have any questions, please go ahead and give us a call. I'll put you, if we're in the middle of a conversation, I'll put you on hold. We'll get to you as soon as possible. Otherwise, keep it right here on AM 1320 WFHR for part 2 of Morning Magazine, where we have part 2 of Morning Magazine. Thank you very much for joining us, everyone. James here with you. And I am joined by Mayor Zach Vruwink and Hobie from the Youth Council. Appreciate you guys joining us today. Thank you for the time. Mayor, I would like to, if you don't mind, jump into the launch of the automated garbage. I know that's on a lot of people's minds, and you guys were talking about it last night, I believe.
Yeah, it was an issue that was brought up again, and probably a couple of points we want to make on this. First of which is the city is still planning to launch this summer. In fact, the date has slid slightly from a late June launch to a July 8th launch. So just after the week of the 4th, the holiday week in which we generally have to shift our garbage collection schedule, we're going to launch our 4-day pickup. And so that'll launch on Monday the 8th. Watch for correspondence. So if individuals are wondering what their garbage day might be, if it's going to change or if it's going to stay the same, letters are going to be sent out to homeowners here and property owners within the city for the residential curbside collection, which will provide a lot of information around pickup schedule, what can be in the bins, what can't be in the bins, all that sort of thing. And then bins will be delivered next week, the last part of next week and then the early part of the following week. So right before the 4th, everyone should have their bins in the city. If there are concerns or questions, they can contact the city garage or the director of public works. And their number, the director of public works, is 421-8255 if folks have questions. But at this point, wait for some correspondence in the mail. We're going to continue to do as much as we can online and social media. All of the new requirements and ordinances are on the city's website if people want to peruse them and see what information's in there. But last night's discussion was around the question of whether or not the aldermen want to revise the ordinance to include mobile home parks, manufactured home parks. Cities generally do not pick up mobile home parks. It's a commercial activity by definition, like apartment buildings and other condominiums and that type of thing. But there is some debate and discussion about including them in our scope uniquely. I can't say that mobile home parks would get bins, but they would potentially receive pickup from the city in the same way they might be getting pickup today, and that is these central dumpsters, essentially, that would get picked up. So that's on the docket for the city council.
And that's something that's come up, because honestly, I hadn't thought about that before, but I could see that as an issue.
Yeah, previously the city had provided, for whatever reason, picked up some mobile home parks and provided some limited commercial pickup, but the city council in its last round and revision of the ordinances clearly delineated residential properties, single-family homes generally, and duplexes from commercial, tenant-occupied premises. So, it's going to be interesting to see where that issue goes. But at this point, we will be launching, despite whatever happens with that change of service, we're going to be launching the pickup for the rest of the city.
And this has been a long project for you. This has been a big, almost your first day in office. This has been going on.
The public works superintendent at the time made it clear that we're going to be needing to replace our garbage trucks at some point in the near future, our recycling truck. We launched single stream automated recycling collection, and that's gone really well and been very popular since we've done that. But garbage has now followed, and it's, as you said, it's 7 years in the making between ordinance revisions, ordering the carts, mapping out the routes. It gives you a baptism by fire in the sense of city administration and all the complexities that go into city picking up your garbage, which one might think is a pretty simple thing. It's far more complicated than that.
I just, again, another one of those things, doing my homework coming into this and the interview. And the other day when I was doing my research on you, it dawned on me, and I just thought about it again as you said that there. You've been doing this 7 years now. Yeah. That's crazy. Yeah. It feels like yesterday.
It does. Time flies.
Really does. And you brought up something really interesting earlier that I noticed going back in research on you and everything, that you didn't really come into this position with an agenda. Right. So many times, especially on the higher levels of politics, that's almost the first thing we find out about a politician is his agenda, is what his or her beliefs are and their feelings, almost before you even know their name, that about them. It's a little different for you. You kind of came into this in a different way.
Right.
As you've been doing this job over the past 7 years, have you gained agendas? Have you found things that, like, this is something I really care about and that I see as an issue that I didn't right away?
Sure. I would say themes of work, categories of work, and it relates to, I think back to when I first was going around the community talking to voters and asking for their vote and their support. Some themes that came out during that time and that really have carried through my administration. And the first of which is to make Wisconsin Rapids a very attractive place for people to live, and if they don't live here, to potentially move here. And we had to address some barriers, some maybe the look and feel sometimes in various elements of our work. From a business standpoint, that Wisconsin Rapids naturally is sort of off the map, as every community is, and you have to do things to get noticed and to be a place that, well, maybe we should consider Wisconsin Rapids. They've got the available workforce, or they have the available property, or whatever the elements might be from a business relocation or business growth standpoint. But yeah, you do find areas of work and categories of which things become natural. Another area has been, we heard a lot about concerns of the aging demographics of the community, and how do we engage youth? How do we get more youthful and progressive perspectives involved in city government? Because by nature, if you don't reach out to those audiences, you're not going to engage them. So you can't sit back in the mayor's office and just expect that people are going to come to you. People will, but it won't be representative of the entire community. So that's been a conscious, I would say, outreach, is to make sure that when we do a project, there's very much a component of community engagement. It's work. It's a lot of time. It's a lot of commitment by myself and city staff, but it's so rewarding because people thank you for the invitation or the opportunity to share what's on their mind. I don't care what the project is, whether it's from the zoo master planning to some of our street work. We've kind of retailored how we engage with residents when we're going to redo their street. So on a proactive basis, we have an open house, as opposed to, you're going to get James, here's how much it's going to cost you to have this street replaced in your street in front of your house. While that is part of it, there's a lot more that goes into it around education and kind of being a bit more proactive than generally how the city would operate. So I think that's shown dividends to us in terms of how people view my administration or city staff, that we're approachable and we're accessible to folks that might have a concern. But definitely, families and young adults, and being a place that people want to perhaps move to or relocate or return to after they go off to college or start their family.
Well, it's something, even, and I'm sure you heard it when you were in high school. I know I did when I was in high school. If there's two big topics that people talk about in this area, it's trains, and it's the idea of, well, okay, I'm a young person, I graduate high school, why should I stay in this area? Or why, should I come back after going to college? Yeah. Should I come back? And when you take family out of the scenario, there's not a lot of reasons for people to come back. Now we're seeing more and more. There are more, and there's more and more attractive things about living here and that. Certainly even more in the short time, from us leaving school. Right. But there is certainly a concern from people about that, and it's good to see some initiative there. Are there other things that you guys are doing to try to bring that into the fold and make that more important?
The less glamorous one is housing, and recognition that if the city doesn't take initiative, it doesn't put effort and energy in addressing areas where there's a gap in housing, whether it's affordability or quality or the types of housing, you're not going to have a community that grows. We're going to continue to look at places like a Plover or a Marshfield or a Wausau that continue to add housing units, and by way of housing units, they add residents. And this city for a long time hadn't prioritized housing. Now, we don't have a lot of property available for development, but we've looked at various infill opportunities. So a couple of areas around housing that are important is we're taking, we've got a program we're just in the process of launching. We just wrote the rules on it, that if a resident wants to build a new home on a on a lot, that somewhere in the city that may have had a home tear down or has a home standing that is far beneath current standards and code and all of the things that it would take to bring it up to standard, that we would invest in that property and give them a cash grant. And so some cities are trying a variety of elements of this, but this is a program that we're launching for single family home construction within the city. And so they'll be able to get a cash grant of $5,000 for the construction, which would offset their permitting costs and some of the other upfront costs. And these are specified areas, not just anywhere in the city, but in areas where maybe we, like I said, had a house fire and the home had to be torn down, or in neighborhoods where we've had substandard homes where they maybe the lots need to be combined, and we have a tear down situation in which you will be eligible for a larger cash grant. So that's one area. We've gotten a lot of apartment activity in multifamily, but now we're starting to do more and more on the single family home side of things.
That's fantastic, and that is such a key part of this, of all of this working out, of eventually being Rapids being the town that we want it to be and everything. And it's one of the things that does not get brought up very much. You guys are certainly on point about it, but when I talk to listeners, when I listen to them having questions for you or something, and I'm like, well, what would you guys like? If you could ask them anything, what would you ask the mayor? Yeah. And that kind of stuff comes up. But then I always like turning it on them. Well, how would you solve that problem? Right. Or what would you two to do about that? Because I think we forget a lot of times that you guys are human beings, that you're citizens, that you live in the same town as we do, that you have every bit of incentive to make things better around here as much as we want it to be. We get a little lost in that sometimes, and especially especially in this day and age when, like we were talking about earlier with the journalism and the fact that we don't have the information like we used to, where we could just grab every day we had a new newspaper with the headlines on it and that kind of thing. So it's all the more important to have that kind of feedback, but also to know that you guys are doing that there is some initiative. It's not something that you're not thinking about, that you certainly have that care. I won't lie and say, I can't lie and say that when you got elected, your age certainly came into mind with that for me and many of the people that I know. That okay, well this is a guy who's going to get it. He's going to understand what we're talking about that when we want to keep younger people here. You're in that age group. You understand that stuff. So that is good to hear, and certainly. It's one of those things that's not going to happen overnight.
Right.
This is a stretch process. We want so badly nowadays for things to happen overnight, and boy, we would love that. That'd be great. You just snap your fingers and have it happen.
That's probably the biggest disappointment for me is I have those same expectations for change in this city that everyone else does. And sometimes I let myself down when something you put so much effort into a point where a project is ready to happen and financing falls through, or a business owner says, I'm going to take this in a different direction, or the market changes. There's all these other variables and pressures, right? That if the city could control that transaction and everything, it would happen already, but it just doesn't work that way. And that's kind of the unique nature of government that I think some folks, and I, again, don't give myself enough credit sometimes from the fact that I too am a citizen and a taxpayer, and I care deeply, and I want to make sure that my home value is protected, that my neighborhood is safe, all the same things that everyone wants in the city. And I think that, the human element, I appreciate your mentioning that, because I think some folks, it's just the nature of, you're in the government and now you're kind of on a different plane. Well, no, we're all in the same community.
We're literally in the same boat together. I mean, you're in the same town, you live in the same area, you have the same taxes, all this stuff. So especially at your level, it really kind of frustrates me, to be honest, when I hear people talk about it and almost talk about you like you're on a different plane or something. You realize he lives in the same town as us here. But that's one of the things that I think that is important to get out there as much and talk about too, is because that's it. Again, your initiatives are normally going to be on the same page as us as citizens.
Right.
We've been speaking with Mayor Zach Vruwink and Hobie from the Youth Council. I want to remind you guys that the phone lines are wide open, 424-2600. If you have a question for the mayor or Hobie, or if you, for some reason, had a question for me, I suppose you could ask. But really, that seems like more of another time, another place for kind of thing. We're going to take our final break real quick. And when we come back, we will have more with Mayor Zach Vruwink, and we'll have Hobie from the Youth Council here on Morning Magazine, AM 1320, WFHR. Where you have Morning Magazine in our final segment here, as we are joined by Mayor Zach Vruwink and Hobie from the Youth Council. I want to thank you both for the time again. I know you're both very busy, and Hobie, it's summer. I mean, there's a million things you could be doing, kid. So I appreciate you being here. It's great that you are. And as long as I've got you, what I would like to do, if you don't mind, is kind of rehash some of the things that we were going over in the first segment there with what you have going on this weekend and the fun excitement that you have there.
Right, sure. So this weekend we have an event called Kids to Park Day, and it's at Robinson Park. Basically, kids of all ages can come over, and there's all kinds of games and activities going on. We've got arts and crafts, kickball, a scavenger hunt, and a few more things. It's from 1 to 3, and we hope to see you there.
Excellent. The 1 to 3, and it is free.
Yes,
it is free to the public. That's something to keep in mind. And Robinson Park's great. I've spent so much of my time at Robinson Park as a kid around here, so that is a fun part of it too. Hobie, what is for you going into the Youth Council? Is this something that you want to continue to kind of do as you go into college, and that now that you've gotten into it, that you when you go into college, say, and they have like different organizations that involve talking with the dean or different stuff like that? Is it this kind of lit a fire in you when it comes to that?
Yeah, I think so. It's pretty cool to be able to have your voice heard. And that's one of the things that I really like about this, so I think so, yeah.
Yeah, I got to tell you, when I was in school, I was one of those rebels without a pause. I just, any chance I had to get on a cause, I jumped on it. My mother's son. But I would have given anything to have an accessibility like this, where you're sitting right next to the mayor of our city. You're able to talk to them all the time. You meet with you have meetings, and that's something that really isn't a lot of us didn't have. I know we didn't have that, and that's a really cool thing to be able to do. And it's great to hear that it's kind of like brought that out of you. That it's something that you want to continue to do.
Yeah, and I really appreciate Zach implementing this. It's pretty cool.
It's great, and I want to mention as well that you said that you got some kids that are seniors going to be moving on, so you're going to be having some openings here. And if I'm a kid and I want to be a part of this, how would I go about doing that?
So on the city's website, under the mayor's page, there's a youth council connection, and the youth council should have an application for it. I think it's on there from last year. There might be some tweaks to it, but we're going to kind of redouble our recruitment efforts over the course of the summer. Hopefully connect with some of the seniors so they can refer and recommend some folks that they know that are underclassmen to consider applying to the program. Again, both high school students from both Lincoln and Assumption, primarily a little bit easier for those folks to get to our meetings in the city than some of the Nakusa and Port Edwards students. So we generally focus on city kids.
And I want to mention too that you guys have a great website. It's a fantastic website. So they're going there, wirapids.org, and then there's the Mayor's Youth Council. There's a side meet from that, but it is a really nice site, very accessible, very easy to maneuver and everything.
Looking at some of the designers in the room here with Travis and Community Media.
Nicely worked.
They did that in-house. So.
Yeah, nice work. That's great. And that's how are you with that, with the social media part of things? I know that that's something that's I've heard from people in the area that they're very happy with. They really enjoy that. That's one of the more positives that I heard. Has that been going well? Have you guys been looking at different avenues of kind of like just different ways you can hear from people and reach people?
Yeah, I think a couple things. I keep getting surprised when cities don't have social media presence because it seems like it's kind of a no-brainer. We launched it in my time probably 7 years ago, because we recognized that so many of our residents were online. So many of them were on Facebook that if we weren't online, we were missing out on an opportunity to communicate and engage with the public. So the city does have a Facebook page. A couple thousand people are on there right now. We'd love for more to continue to follow us so we can continue to get out street closures to community events to whatever else that's happening in the city. Our police department's on there, our fire department. I have a page where I push out community updates to the community on various topics that might be coming before the council. Some we talk about on air, some we don't get to talk about on air, but we found it's gone really well. I think the other thing that we do is Facebook Live. So we live stream all of our public meetings now on Facebook. Some cities refuse to do that because it offers another opportunity for dialogue for people to sit at their computer and comment on the meetings as opposed to coming to the meeting and commenting. So we made the conscious decision to do that. I think it's gone really well, and I would encourage other places to consider doing that might be thinking about it. But it's been by and large very successful and very positive. We get a lot of comments and questions via Facebook, and I often wonder if we didn't have the Facebook page, how would people be asking those questions? Would they have to pick up the phone, maybe leave a message, get a call back? Would they maybe send an email? Would they make an appointment to visit myself or another department? But I think by and large it's been a great tool for us.
One of the main things that I hear from you, not only in this interview but in your time in office, is that how important that is to hear from people. That that accessibility is there, but there's only so much you can do. People have to come to you with stuff, and that goes a long way. Not only with your citizens and everything, but just in general, I think is a good example to other cities of how there should be complete transparency with an office, and the idea of doing that is going a long way with people. I see. Well,
thank you.
And it also is noteworthy that you guys aren't just kind of sitting back and like, well, we like where things are, we're good. Like you're looking at new ways and different ways to reach out to people, different ways that you can hear from people.
Yes.
You're always, at least 5 times in this hour we've been talking, you've brought up about how you want people to reach out to you, want to hear from your citizens, and different ways of doing that. So that's important. It goes a long way with people.
Thank you.
And it's great to hear that you're not done. There's more that you're trying to do to hear from people and reach out from them.
Most definitely. Yeah, like you said, it's a lot easier to sit back and complain about something that's happening in the city when I find most of the time it's not the city's doing, it's somebody else's decision. In the case of a business closure or a business relocation, oftentimes those don't really have anything to do with the city. It's market forces or a business owner's decision or a bankruptcy in the case of like Shopko's closure. The city will will do what it can to engage with new tenants, but we don't own the property. We can't control what those owners do with that business or that real estate. We have zoning and things to protect ourselves, but again, that doesn't always require them to do what we'd like them to do. So certainly, I think social media, while it comes with a lot of negativity and a lot of venue for people to vent and not necessarily be a part of the solution, as you talked about pushing back to people, well, how would you solve it? It does offer a lot of good. And, certainly on any topic, aldermen are there, alderpersons are there for community member input. Another thing that we've launched is our See-Click Fix app, which is if you could download city or type in City of Wisconsin Rapids on people's smartphones, they can actually report ordinance violations. So uncut grass to unplowed and unshoveled snow and sidewalk issues, the whole gamut, all of which that empowers our residents to make our city a better place.
Fantastic. Well said. Yeah. I want to thank you both for the time. Hobie from the Youth Council and Mayor Zach Vruwink. Really appreciate the time, you guys. Thank you so much.
Thanks, James.
We'll talk soon. And that has been Morning Magazine on AM 1320 WFHR.